Exposed. How a wounded Korean Mafia boss's hidden love for a black nurse led to an incredible secret. Jin-ho Park stood in the dilapidated warehouse that once thrummed with the pulse of his criminal empire. The shadows seemed thicker inside, suffocating. He could almost hear the whispers of betrayal that had scattered his once loyal crew, like leaves in the wind. Every echo of laughter that filled these walls now mockingly reminded him of the power he once held, now crumbling beneath the weight of regret. The streets of Chicago, once his playing field, now felt like a cage. He was a ghost of his former self, trapped between who he had been and who he yearned to become. Outside, a commotion broke the silence, the sounds of raised voices and shattering glass. His chest tightened. Jin-ho hesitated, torn between stepping into the fray and burying himself deeper into the layers of pain. He knew violence. He'd ruled through it. But what good was it now? He had nothing left to protect but the fragile strands of hope that had begun to weave themselves through his life, thanks to Tamika Johnson. Tamika, the nurse with dreams as bright as her smile, represented everything he had lost. She was fierce and resilient, often wielding her stethoscope like a shield against the injustice around her. Every encounter with her illuminated the cracks in his armor, revealing a yearning for a life unmarked by dishonor. But he was haunted. He could never give her what she deserved. His past lay heavy against his shoulders like a boulder. He couldn't risk her aspirations or her safety, yet he felt the pull toward her with an intensity he couldn't comprehend. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the altercation intensified outside, a surge of protective instinct ignited within him. He dashed toward the chaos, muscles taut, heart racing. Blood pooled on the asphalt. Tamika, determined and unwavering, knelt beside a wounded man. Her fingers moved deftly. Fear wrapped around his lungs. What if they saw him? What if she took notice of the darkness that clung to him? Would it cast a shadow over her ambitions? Would she turn away in disgust, leaving him empty once again? Every second felt like an eternity. Jin-ho's internal turmoil tightened its grip as he watched her work, a brilliant light amidst the horror. Their eyes met in a fleeting moment, and in that silent exchange, he glimpsed both strength and vulnerability. She inspired him, yet he feared that unveiling his past would extinguish that light, leaving nothing but ashes behind. Just when it seemed he'd found grounding, the weight of reality crashed back in. He could feel his former allies lurking, feeding on the turmoil of his life, willing to drag him back into darkness, just as he was beginning to see the faint glimmer of a different path. The demons of the past, hungry for revenge, loomed larger than ever. Would it all come crashing down, bathing Tamika's future in chaos? Anxiety surged within him, as he battled the guilt of wanting someone so far removed from the life he had led. The boundaries of love and fear twisted like an ever-darkening storm. His mind raced as he heard whispered threats riddled with intimate knowledge, the kind of whispers that could destroy everything he'd held dear. And with each pulse of darkness creeping closer, the decision loomed larger. Would he risk everything for a chance at redemption through Tamika? Or would he retreat into the shadows, relegating her dreams to dust? As despair clawed at him, Jin-ho's heart thumped with the unyielding questions of fate. Would love be enough to redeem a soul so scarred, or would it lead to the ultimate betrayal? Jin-ho's instincts surged past his doubts as he pushed through the chaotic scene outside. Time felt warped, each moment stretching and contracting like a heartbeat echoing in a deafening silence. He glimpsed the hostility in the crowd, a seething mass driven by more than just fear. Confusion merged with fury, igniting primal instincts. He recognized the lust for violence, the familiar rhythm of his past. Tamika's concentrated focus on the wounded man cut through the tumult. He wanted to shout her name, to pull her away from danger, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he watched as she worked with a precision that was startling, the calm embodiment of a healer amidst chaos. She held a power he had long abandoned, the courage to confront challenges head-on, to risk the unknown for the sake of others. His footsteps faltered for a split second, burdened by the weight of a choice. He could step in and silence the fray, asserting dominance as he'd done countless times before. Yet now he hesitated. What kind of king would he be if a mere show of force jeopardized this fragile equilibrium they'd begun to build? A darker side of himself whispered dangerously, old instincts urging him to reclaim respect through fear, to crush the opposition as he once would have. But that was a life laced with blood and shadows, a life that threatened to engulf any light Tamika had ignited within him. The thought of dragging her back into that darkness twisted his gut. He glanced at Tamika. Shouldn't she be safe, away from all this? The juxtaposition of her determination against the violence swirling around them left him grappling with admiration and guilt. This was a woman who had refused to back down, who fought for justice while he had danced with ruin. Could he truly claim to be worthy of her affection, knowing where he'd come from? At that moment, a shout tore through the air, a warning shot, distant yet menacing. He instinctively turned his gaze towards the sound. Reality crashed over him like waves, leaving no room for doubt. If he did not intervene now, he risked losing her, losing everything he had begun to believe in. He had to face the chaos head-on, not with fists, but with resolve. Fueled by adrenaline and a newfound purpose, Jin-ho maneuvered through the crowd, feeling the familiar crackle of electricity running through his veins. He wasn't the same man who had built empires on fear. He was willing to stand for something greater, Tamika's vision of hope and healing. "Tamika!" he shouted, cutting through the background noise. Her eyes widened as she met his gaze, recognizing the weight of his presence. "Jin-ho, get back!" she yelled, her voice steady but laced with concern. For the first time, she didn't see him as a figure cloaked in shadows, but as a man willing to forge a new path. The air shifted, tension peppered with a palpable connection. He was not in control of the chaos, but he was ready to reshape the narrative, not as a man of violence, but as a man of conviction. As Tamika motioned for him to come closer, a distant voice echoed back. It wasn't merely a shout. It was a reminder of his past antagonists stirred by the chaos. Recognition fell over him, tightening his chest. They had come seeking retribution. The growls in the crowd shifted focus, and it became clear. This was a confrontation he could no longer avoid. Time to face the demons that threatened to rip apart everything he dared to rebuild. With a steely determination, Jin-ho locked his gaze on the approaching figures, ready to confront his past. Was he fully prepared to sacrifice the illusions he had built around himself for a chance at redemption with Tamika? He couldn't hide from the truth any longer. His next moves would define not just his fate, but theirs. But as he took a step forward, the chilling realization struck him. Some battles cannot be fought alone. Would he risk pulling Tamika into this storm? Or could he find a way to shield her without losing the newfound sense of self he had fought so hard to discover? The chaos loomed larger around Jin-ho, heavy and suffocating. He had moved toward the brink, not just of his confrontation but of his essence itself. Each breath was a fill of purpose, yet doubt brewed in the corners of his mind. What if stepping into the fray meant losing everything he'd just begun to grasp? He was evolving, reshaping his identity, but the specter of his past sent chills down his spine, urging him to slip back into old ways. He felt the ground shake beneath him as the sources of the chaotic voices grew closer. They were not just shadows this time. Familiar faces emerged from the dark, faces he had once commanded. Old acquaintances turned adversaries, emboldened by the rioting chaos. Their presence birthed a surge of memories, reminders of power steeped in fear. Was this how he would be defined? Caught in the throes of an inevitable battle driven by shadowy figures prowling just beyond the light. "Stay close," he called to Tamika, conviction settling into his tone. It was more a plea than a command. As he advanced, he took in her determination. The quickness of her hands as she moved to aid the injured riot participants, and her fearless gaze that offered a lifeline even amidst despair. Jin-ho had always revered strength, but what he saw in her now was a formidable blend of courage and compassion. It forced him to confront his own core, a deep-rooted tenacity lying dormant until this very moment. In an instant, the air thickened, shifting from mere chaos to the palpable tension of conflict. Jin-ho's heart raced as he recognized the old guard now closing in on him, their eyes flashing with memories of allegiance and betrayal. He had thought he left them behind, but here they stood, insatiable in their need for retribution, fueled by the very violence he intended to starve from his life. "Why do you return?" he thought furiously, narrowing his focus on their leader, a man named Ryu, with whom he shared an entwined past. Ryu's presence snapped at him like a memory trying to rise from the depths of his consciousness. Jin-ho's resolve began to bloom, as much a recognition of himself as it was of how far he had come. There would be no room for fear-driven decisions. Instead, he needed to think strategically. Every move he made from now on had to resonate with the man he wished to be. How could he stand firm without losing Tamika, this unexpected light in his life, while still confronting the darkness that refused to let go? "Back off," Jin-ho's voice rang out more firmly, quicker than his own expectations. "You think you can threaten me? What I've built cannot be undone by your petty desires." Laughter erupted around Ryu, mocking the sincerity behind his words. It clawed at Jin-ho's confidence, but he held steady. No longer was he merely vying for dominance. He was reclaiming an identity, a space where violence would not dictate terms anymore. Yet, the gnawing thoughts of Tamika stirred in the recesses of his mind. Would they reach for her as they had once before? At that moment, Jin-ho made a critical decision. He couldn't protect her by keeping her at a distance. It was time to draw her into the fight, not out of recklessness, but as an aware partner. He needed her as much as she needed him, sharing strength not only in shadow, but in shared light. As he turned towards her, expecting to extend the invitation to stand by him, the thrumming energy around them shifted once more. This time it felt less chaotic, and more electrified with the prospect of connection, comprehension, and confrontation. In that shared moment, they could redefine the battlefield, not as adversaries but as allies standing firm against their respective pasts. With renewed purpose, Jin-ho nodded, signaling Tamika to stand strong at his side. They would confront whatever lay ahead together, demonstrating a new strength born from trust and a refusal to succumb to the blood-stained ties of the past. The clamor intensified, and Jin-ho couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched, tracked. Even as he readied himself for the inevitable fight, he sensed another shadow looming in the periphery, one that hinted at complications yet to come. Something told him that this growing alliance would be pivotal, but could it withstand the tests lurking just beyond the fray? As he prepared to face Ryu and the ghosts that threatened his newfound path, Jin-ho felt that the true battle was only beginning. The ties of the past were about to intertwine with the future he dared to weave. The question now loomed larger. Would this be the moment he would either fully step into his new self or falter in the grip of familiar demons? The air pulsed with tension as Jin-ho and Tamika squared off against the shadows of his past. Ryu, flanked by men who once revered him, pressed closer, a predatory gleam in his eye. The laughter that had echoed moments before reverberated in Jin-ho's mind, taunting him with reminders of old ways and unyielding power dynamics. As his heart raced, he felt the weight of their eyes, each one expecting something from him. A reaction rooted in fear, anger, or perhaps submission. Jin-ho's resolve was concrete now. The chains of his old identity rattled, but the echoes grew faint in the face of Tamika's steady presence beside him. She was no longer just a figure in his life. She was a critical piece of this new reality he aimed to create, and he needed to convey that not just in words, but in action. "Tamika," he said, keeping his voice low yet deliberate. "Trust me. We'll stand together. I can't do this without you." Instead of seeing fear in her eyes, Jin-ho noticed something unexpected. Strength. There was no hesitance in her gaze, only a determined clarity, as if she understood the depth of the battle they faced. It wasn't merely about physical confrontation. It was about taking a stand, reclaiming their identities in the face of relentless darkness. Jin-ho took a small step forward, feeling the surge of energy pulse through him. He wouldn't just confront Ryu. He would expose the very core of this conflict. No longer was it merely a struggle for dominance. It was a struggle for integrity. Ryu's laughter began to settle as Jin-ho's determination thickened the air between them. "Is this what you wanted, Ryu?" Jin-ho's voice cut through the mocking laughter. "To instill fear? To embrace failure in the guise of power? Look at what you've become." He felt his words hit Ryu, a strike aimed not only at the man, but at everything he represented. Stunned silence replaced the laughter, and for a heartbeat, Jin-ho saw uncertainty flicker across Ryu's face. It was a revelation not of victory, but of vulnerability, a reminder that old hierarchies could crumble when confronted with truth rather than violence. But Jin-ho couldn't linger in this moment of moral clarity. He sensed the malice brewing behind Ryu's forced expression. He needed to move forward, to act decisively. "Let's give them a reason to fear," Ryu finally returned, a dangerous smirk breaking the surface. "You'll regret this." Laughing contemptuously, he gestured to his men, and the tension returned, thickening the atmosphere. Jin-ho inhaled deeply, his instincts screaming that their proximity was no longer protective. They were standing at a precipice, and the very ground was shifting beneath them. "Tamika!" he called, vaulting into action as the first man lunged. Their partnership ignited. They moved as one, deftly sidestepping common patterns of engagement, each action a testament to their trust. Tamika's movements were fluid and decisive, her training evident as she supported Jin-ho, blocking attacks and countering in ways that surprised even him. What he had underestimated was the power of their alliance. A fusion of wills, a tapestry woven with threads of recognition and respect. Each time he glanced at her, he found a confidence reflected in her presence. It urged him to dig deeper within himself, for the strength he had long thought lost. Then came a flash of realization, mid-fight, that struck him with fervor. Jin-ho was not merely the sum of his past mistakes, or the product of a violent legacy. He was evolving in real time, drawing not only from experience, but from the bond he shared with Tamika. She was showing him how to face battle with honor rather than fear, to translate power into purpose. But even as they gained ground against Ryu's crew, a darker shadow hovered at the edges, more menacing than the brawling chaos, an unknown element threatening to dismantle this fledgling alliance before it could fully form. As the fight ensued, a chill ran through Jin-ho. Who was that lurking in the background, poised and patient? What hidden sins awaited their revelation? Knowing they were not alone gave him an inkling of hope, yet the anticipation of betrayal loomed just on the horizon. The intensity of the struggle surged, and Jin-ho found himself teetering on the edge of a precipice from which there was no return. Would this be the climax of his journey towards authenticity, or merely another chapter closing in a life riddled with conflict? As he pushed forward with renewed vigor, he held tightly to Tamika's presence, realizing that the battle stretched far beyond what lay before them. It had roots in the very core of their identities. What final truth awaited him in this burgeoning alliance? The tension in the air escalated, and Jin-ho knew. He was about to find out. Jin-ho collided with the visceral chaos as he fought against the men Ryu had unleashed. Each punch he threw, every dodge he executed, resonated with the strength drawn from Tamika's unwavering presence beside him. The conflict was no longer just physical, but transformed into a primal struggle for identity, pushing the confines of his past further into the distance. Amid the fray, every strike felt like a declaration. Jin-ho was resisting the very representations of fear and power that Ryu embodied. He began to comprehend the depth of his transformation. Not only was he engaged in a fight for survival, but also in a profound reclaiming of his sense of self. This realization surged within him, reminding him that every decision had a ripple effect on who he was evolving into, yet shadows loomed in more ways than one. The air thickened with doubt as he caught glimpses of a figure lingering at the edge of the brawl. It gnawed at his focus, creating a fraying thread connected to his past. Who was it? Was it someone from Ryu's world, a specter from his history, or a fresh embodiment of threat? Each breath felt heavy, laden with uncertainty. Tamika moved fluidly, her tactical responses compelling Jin-ho to question his own capabilities even further. She struck with precision, her training apparent, but he began to wonder where her insight into this chaos was rooted. It wasn't merely instinct driving her. There was something deeper, a conviction that mirrored his own awakening. "Keep your eyes open, Jin-ho," she called out, cutting through the haze. The urgency in her voice pushed him beyond instinct. It coaxed strategic thinking from within. In the midst of the clattering chaos, he became acutely aware of the tactics necessary to adapt. As the fight continued, he began processing not only the immediate need to defend themselves, but the larger implications of their resistance. Were they forging a new narrative for themselves in this moment? What would it mean if they emerged victorious? Every decision made felt monumental. Was he prepared to accept the man he was becoming? The thought hammered away at him, while he ducked a swinging fist, pivoted, and returned an array of calculated strikes with a newfound precision. But doubt threaded through him. What if the outcome of this confrontation didn't align with the ideals he wished to embody? In one moment of chaos, he noticed a shift in Ryu's demeanor, a flicker of something vulnerable behind his hardened exterior. It struck Jin-ho. Could Ryu's reliance on intimidation stem from a place of insecurity? This realization ignited a fire within him. The most profound lessons about strength could emerge from moments of weakness. Just then, the figure lurking at the edge suddenly stepped forward. A new player entered the fray, shattering his concentration and throwing him off balance. The sharp edge of apprehension gnawed at Jin-ho as he recognized the individual. It was someone whose presence threatened to unravel everything he was building with Tamika. Panic threatened to seep in, but Jin-ho pushed it aside, summoning the resolve he had cultivated. He'd come too far to succumb to doubt now, not when he had a chance at freedom rooted in authenticity. "Tamika, stay close," he shouted, fortifying their bond in the uncertainty swirling around them. With the newcomer crashing into their battle, a new wave of tension enveloped them. What did this mean? Did this complicate the alliance they had forged? And could his own past now consume the future he was beginning to carve out with Tamika at his side? Jin-ho braced himself. This conflict was only escalating. As he prepared for whatever challenge lay ahead, he understood that the fight was not merely against Ryu and his men. It was for the right to redefine who he was amidst the chaos, guided by the strength of the alliance he had forged with Tamika. But fate had designed a more complicated branching path ahead. What devastating truths would this unexpected confrontation reveal? And would Jin-ho be equipped to confront them head-on? Jin-ho's heart raced as he shifted his focus to the new figure that had breached the periphery of his battle. The familiarity of the person struck him like a bolt of lightning, a ghost from his history materializing to haunt him in the worst possible moment. The realization twisted in him, amplifying the chaos surrounding the fight. "Seojin," he murmured, the name slipping from his lips. Memories of laughter and shared dreams intertwined with the present chaos, each pulse a haunting reminder of choices made and paths diverged. She stood there, poised, with a look of fierce determination, her presence both a comfort and a curse. Tamika caught the shift in his demeanor instantly. "Jin-ho, concentrate," her urgency wrapped around him like a lifeline. But how could he concentrate when a part of his past was glaring back at him, radiating potential distraction and uncertainty? The fight momentarily faded. The surrounding bodies blurred into the background. Seojin's gaze bore into him, a mixture of confusion and unspoken questions written on her face. What was she doing here? Had she come to rescue him? Or was she merely another element of Ryu's intricate web of manipulation? Retreating into the recesses of his mind, Jin-ho weighed the implications of her presence. Ryu thrived on fracture, exploiting vulnerabilities, and her arrival could jeopardize everything he and Tamika had established. Was it possible that Ryu had orchestrated this carefully, amplifying the tension at the moment it was most critical? Stepping forward, he clashed with the instinct to recall their past, his heart hardened by the choices he had made since their paths had diverged. "Seojin!" His voice surged with urgency, cutting through the chaos that engulfed them. "What are you doing here?" Another strike landed somewhere within the brawl, jolting Jin-ho back to the present. Reality surged painfully against his memories as she stepped closer. "I've come to help," she said, her voice steady, yet laced with something deeper. An appeal, or perhaps a challenge. Could he allow this connection to materialize again? The risk struck at the core of his burgeoning self-identity, a potential unraveling of all he had fought for. As flares of anger surged in him, Jin-ho quickly acknowledged this inner turmoil. How could she profess to help, when everything they once shared had left scars? In the throes of essence and confrontation, Jin-ho felt the duality of his instincts. Protect Tamika, and yet safeguard his connection with Seojin. A sudden blow to the side broke through his reverie, snapping him back to the battle, and instinct took over. He dodged, retaliating with swift precision, a dance of survival with the stakes rising higher than ever. "Stay back," he shouted at Seojin, signaling her to avoid the fight. He needed clarity. Control. A glimmer of hurt flashed in her eyes, yet she did not retreat. "This is your battle, Jin-ho, but I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, uncertainty coiled within him. The fight before him morphed into a deeper battle, not just against Ryu and his henchmen, but against the specter of the past. A vivid confrontation with who he had been versus the man he wanted to become. The tension escalated, a pendulum of choice swinging dangerously. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he executed precise strikes, propelled not just by the fight's urgency, but by a burgeoning realization. Who he surrounded himself with would define who he truly was. As Jin-ho maneuvered among the chaos, every connection, every decision reverberated within him. He felt a storm brewing at the nexus of his two worlds clashing brutally. The one he fought against, and the one beckoning him to remember who he was. The revelation struck deep within. Understanding would be forged not in isolation, but interwoven through struggles with those he had loved and lost. But as the fight intensified, questions lingered. Could he truly integrate these two parts of his life in a way that honored both? And as Ryu watched from the shadows, was the real battle not against his men, but against the remnants of his own history? In that electric moment, as fists flew and voices rose, Jin-ho found himself standing at a precipice of a new self-definition that hinged exclusively on the choices he would make next. Would he choose to embrace both the chaos of his past and the promise of his present, or would he let the currents pull him under? The storm was brewing, and now everything depended on how he would navigate through it. What truths would he unearth as he faced the ghosts of his past? And was he brave enough to confront them both for his sake and for Tamika's? Jin-ho's body moved on instinct, every punch and kick an unconscious answer to the chaos swirling around him. The rhythmic pounding of fists against flesh matched the tumult in his mind, where Seojin's presence ignited both memories and confusion. As he fought, each strike became a test, a battle not solely against Ryu's men, but against the subtle pull of nostalgia, hinting at unreconciled feelings that threatened to fracture his focus. He snuck a glance at Seojin, still steadfast in her stance, Her refusal to back down fueled an unexpected anger. It was a challenge to everything he had decided to be. The paths he diverged from his past felt like a heavy weight on his chest. These conflicting emotions were fraying the threads of his carefully constructed self. Dodge, hit, parry. There was a mechanical ease to the fight, almost instinctual, yet in this engagement, the stakes had morphed. Instead of just survival, Jin-ho was wrestling with his identities, forming an intricate web in his mind. Outside, he was the hardened warrior shaped by years of conflict. Inside, he grappled with echoes of a young man who had cherished hope and love in the arms of the woman before him. Focus. Tamika's voice sliced through his reverie again, pulling his attention back to the immediate threat. He nodded, determination washing over him like cold water. Yet he couldn't help but notice the way Seojin was watching him, the intensity of her gaze igniting embers of thought. What if she could understand all he had become? What if she saw the man beneath the pain? He blocked another punch and retaliated, but the mental dissonance was growing unbearable. Every kick he threw felt less like a physical exertion and more like a declaration of who he was becoming. A man that could embrace his past but not be defined by it. Then, something shifted. A realization. The brawl wasn't just a throwing of fists but a pivotal stage. Each interaction stood as a metaphor for personal choices. He could approach this chaos either as a protector of a past self or as an architect of a new future. Sweeping one opponent's legs out from under him, Jin-ho saw Tamika shift slightly toward him, ready to join in the fray. The unspoken bond forged through shared struggle solidified his instincts further. This was about more than evasion. It was about unity against an oppressive weight they both felt. Her black skin and his Korean heritage were elements of shared struggle against those who sought to tear them down. Seojin's presence was a doorway to old memories, but he had to make a decision. How could he reconcile their past with the identity he fought to construct? Could they form a bridge between what had been and what could still be? His mind whirled, tangling the implications of the fight and the woman who stood witness to it all. He could feel the heat of his pulse quickening, the tightness in his chest sharpening into clarity. As another opponent fell, Jin-ho pivoted, his gaze locked on Seojin. "You want to help?" he shouted above the din, fierce and reckless. "Then stay back while I finish this. I can't let you get hurt." A moment of silence fell between them, the world blurring around them as her eyes searched his, full of unyielding strength and shared memories. "You don't get to dictate this," she snapped back, steady and fierce. "I'm part of this battle, Jin-ho, not just your past." That declaration resonated deep within him, igniting a spark he hadn't realized he needed. It was an awakening. He was not just a product of his past choices, nor a single narrative of hurt or fear. He was capable of forging a new identity, one that included love and struggle intertwined with grit. As the fight surged forward, he understood that the real victory lay not in defeating Ryu, though that was essential, but in accepting all parts of himself and the relationships that defined him. With renewed vigor, he fought, both physically and emotionally, the determination to integrate the duality of his existence driving him forward. But layers of pain remain, and with every punch thrown, doubts surfaced. His heart raced as he thought. Was the past really something to embrace? And if so, at what cost? For every victory in combat, he was gaining insight, but the readiness for true confrontation with his history, and the repercussions of bringing Seojin back into his life, was still on the horizon, looming with an unsettling intensity. As the brawl unfolded, Jin-ho felt the winds of change swirl around him, whispering of revelations yet to come. What would happen when the dust settled? Would he stand victorious, or would he find that the remnants of the past could just as easily pull him down? The toils of the battle persisted, but the larger struggle within surged to the forefront, awaiting its own moment of truth. In the charged atmosphere of the fight, every movement felt amplified, as if the stakes had risen beyond the physical confrontation. Jin-ho's muscles burned with exertion, yet his mind whirled, caught between the chaotic present and the murky memories of the past. With each opponent he dispatched, the resolve to confront his own vulnerabilities solidified. Seojin's fierce spirit had not only become a catalyst for his awakening, but a mirror reflecting the complexities of his choices. "Who am I?" he questioned in silence as he landed a solid blow on one of Ryu's men. The thud reverberated not just in the empty air but deep within, a resounding echo of confusion and determination. The fight had morphed into a testament, not just against Ryu, but against the ghosts of his past that clung to him like shadows. The heart of his battle lay not in reclaiming a lost love, but in understanding how to exist alongside it. With every punch he threw, he felt the weight of expectation pressing upon him. Would he relinquish the hardened facade he donned to survive? Could he be both the fierce protector Seojin needed and the vulnerable man wishing for connection? It felt paradoxical, being both strong and open, yet it was the duality he now craved. As he parried another strike, his mind crystallized with clarity. He would no longer hide from the storms of his feelings, but wield them as part of his strength. Tamika's fierce determination complemented his resolve, her very presence reinforcing the importance of acknowledgement and unity. They were not just allies in this fight, but companions on a parallel journey, both battling their demons in different forms. "Keep moving, Jin-ho," she called out as she deflected an incoming attack, channeling unexpected adrenaline that surged through him once again. Yet amidst the chaos, the soft whisper of doubt crept back in. Would embracing his past mean losing himself? The thought loomed large as he took a moment to create space, dodging an incoming blow. Seojin's unwavering stance fed the conflicting narrative swirling in his mind. She was here, fully present, and demanding recognition for her agency. He could not bear to see her hurt battling alongside him. Yet was it cowardice to want her sheltered from the realities he faced? He recalled their shared laughter, how they once explored the city hand in hand, oblivious to the weight of their respective histories. Now, those memories tasted bittersweet. Could he reconcile such joy with the turmoil he faced? As he delivered a roundhouse kick, he found himself glancing at her again. The fire in her eyes was undeniable, beckoning him to confront rather than evade. "This isn't just my fight, Seojin," he called back, the frustration spilling over. "I don't want you here to endanger yourself. Not ever again." His voice betrayed him, filled with an urgency that made her react, not with submission but with unyielding strength. "I refuse to be sidelined," she shouted back, each word a revolution. "You don't get to choose my battles, Jin-ho. I stand beside you because I choose to, not just because I'm part of your past." That conviction sent a rush of conflicting emotions through him, a mixture of pride and fear. Could he genuinely embrace his identity as a warrior, and as someone yearning for intimate connection? The battle around them intensified, but inwardly, he resolved to confront what felt like a battleground of its own, the fight within. He sensed the tides of change as he dispatched another enemy, but the shadows remained deep. The future loomed uncertain. With every combatant he faced, he could almost feel the weight of the crossroads ahead, where the choice to embrace their shared past or forge a new path awaited him. Why is it so hard to let go? His mind wrestled with the thought, questioning if acceptance meant bargaining with pain. Would acceptance inherently mean letting Seojin into the labyrinth of his existence, complete with the thorns of his past? The moment hung charged, the weight of truth pressing against him, like the stifling air after an electrical storm. He would need resilience, not just of the body, but of spirit. The fight was hardly over. It stirred a deeper battle within him, poised to surface at the worst of times. As foes closed in around him, his focus sharpened. The time had come to face both Ryu and the consequences of all he had kept hidden. What if I falter? Fear whispered, mingling with a burgeoning resolve. In the tumult of fists and fury, Jin-ho understood that a greater transformation was unfolding here, one that required unleashing the layers of himself. Not merely the past he ached to forget, but a future he dared to fight for. Each gasp, each clash, resonated with the need for definitive action, and he knew that soon enough he'd have to confront Seojin's claim, and ultimately the truth about who he'd become. But even as victory loomed, the prospect of vulnerability sat heavily at the forefront, awaiting its moment of confrontation. Would he finally stand unguarded, or would his greatest battle yet, embracing love, prove more formidable than any foe he faced now? The air hummed with unanswered questions, and beneath the frenetic energy of the fight, a new reality beckoned, waiting to strike when he least expected it. Jin-ho's heart pounded in his chest, each strike against Ryu's men igniting a renewed resolve within him. The cacophony of fists meeting flesh, the sharp echoes of grunts and gasps became a strange symphony, pushing him to the edge of his limits while simultaneously drawing him deeper into the maelstrom of self-reflection. He could feel his walls start to crack, the layers he had so meticulously built around his heart weakening with every passing moment. Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of clarity began to crystallize. The battle wasn't just physical, it was a metamorphosis. Each opponent he felled was a symbolic relinquishment of his fears, doubts, and the burdens of his past. Jin-ho had often cloaked himself in the armor of a hardened warrior, but now the vulnerability Seojin demanded from him began to feel less like a liability and more like an opportunity for genuine strength. With a swift kick, he dispatched another foe and found himself facing Tamika. Her fierce determination sparked something in him, a quiet but potent encouragement. She glanced back at him, the intensity of her gaze urging him to confront not just his enemies but himself. "No more running, Jin-ho. You know what you have to do." Her voice cut through the haze, grounding him and illuminating the path forward. Yes, he needed to face Ryu, but more than that, he had to confront the shadows lurking within his own heart. The stakes were not just survival. They were redemption, love, and for the first time, presence. Would he deny himself the possibility of connection for the sake of fear? Or would he risk it all to embrace the love that beckoned with every pulse? As he fended off another assailant, fragments of memories with Seojin flooded his consciousness. Her laughter that lit up even his darkest moments, the warmth of her touch grounding him when the world spun out of control. They were no longer distant echoes, but poignant reminders of what he yearned to reclaim. The question no longer hovered above him. It demanded an answer. His hand connected with a strong punch that sent shockwaves through his opponent, and that very impact carried a weight beyond physicality. It was as if he was shattering not just another man, but the chains weighing him down. The taste of conflict morphed into an invitation for clarity, begging him to choose authenticity over survival. "Seojin, I see you," he roared, his voice a clarion call amidst the battleground. It was affirmation, a declaration that he was ready to make his fight about more than just man against man. The realization pooled around him. Embracing his past and the love he felt for Seojin was not a vulnerability, but a source of strength that could fuel him forward. But even as he asserted his inner strength, a wall of doubt threatened to rise. Would she still want him, encumbered by the weight of his history? The vulnerability that had bloomed within him now posed a risk that came from expecting her to understand, to accept, and to love the entirety of him. In the thick of the fray, he reeled back for a moment, creating just enough space to catch his breath. The idea of leaving wounds exposed, allowing her to see the very thing that tormented him, was daunting. Yet, the urge to bring forth this truth grew. He had always been a protector. Why not now allow her to hold his heart, fractured and raw? As another opponent rushed forward, Jin-ho blocked the assault with newfound resilience, the burn in his muscles serving not just as a reminder of his physical limits, but as a lesson in emotional fortitude. His body moved with the understanding that he would not fight against the currents of vulnerability any longer. Instead, he would harness it, wield it like a weapon against the doubt that had kept him shackled. He dove back into the fray, adrenaline surging. Jin-ho became a whirlwind of calculated strikes and strategic dodges, each movement now infused with a new purpose, to clear the path not just to victory, but towards an honest confrontation with his own heart. The air buzzed around him, electric with the prospect of change, as he became increasingly aware that this fight was about more than defeating Ryu. It was ultimately about stepping into his own identity, but the realization didn't come without its shadows. Behind every punch and every block, the nagging thought lingered. Was he ready to confront Seojin with all that he was? The path ahead loomed uncertain, filled with trembling anticipation and the specter of truth. If he could survive this clash of wills, what would emerge when the dust settled? As fists flew and adrenaline surged, Jin-ho felt the tides shifting within him. The battle was only the beginning. Beyond it, a confrontation awaited that could either liberate or bind him further. Would he have the courage to face Seojin with the whole of himself exposed, or would fear pull him down into the depths once more? The answer danced just out of reach, promising to unveil itself at the precipice of vulnerability. The chaos erupted around Jin-ho as he fought with raw determination, each strike a declaration of defiance against his past. The weight of memories warred with his present, and yet, clarity emerged amidst the tumult. He was no longer just a product of violence and shadows. He was a man transforming, reclaiming his essence through every blow. The remnants of his past lingered in the form of Ryu and his men, yet each opponent dispatched was not merely an act of combat, but a shedding of the old self that had hindered his progress. He had buried his yearning for connection under layers of armor, but respect for the fierce bond forming with Tamika and the undeniable presence of Seojin quickened his resolve. Standing together, they were a testament to their journeys, a shared strength ignited from the ashes of their histories. "Keep fighting!" Tamika's voice rang like a bell, grounding him in purpose. Their struggles resonated deeply. This was not just a fight against a physical adversary, but a reclamation of who he was and who he aspired to become. With each powerful kick, Jin-ho embraced the liberation of acceptance, letting the pulse of regret transform into renewed determination. He envisioned the life that awaited him, one intertwined with Tamika, and perhaps a reconciled past with Seojin that did not carry the burdens of their former relationship. As the brawl raged on, his gaze locked momentarily with Seojin's. The fire in her eyes was a dual call to action, one that dared him to confront the truths of their shared past while pushing him towards a future he yearned for. The echoes of laughter, the shared dreams, they all clashed with his desire to protect. Would love's path lead him back to the haunting memories, or could he carve out a space where both connections could coexist? Ducking beneath a swinging fist, he countered with a precision that showcased not only his physical prowess, but a burgeoning understanding of himself. No longer did he look at Seojin as a reminder of his failures. Instead, he began to see her as a part of the mosaic of his identity, a vital piece that encapsulated his rich, if tumultuous, past. "Seojin!" he shouted, the words bursting forth with emotion. "I need you to understand." The blend of desperation and hope fueled him. "This fight is for both of us, for our past but also for what I can become." His words hung in the air, a bridge between memories and the choices ahead. She met his gaze with fierce resolve, calling back, "I am here because I choose to be, and together we can rewrite the narrative." At that moment, clarity washed over Jin-ho like a cleansing tide. The battle before him transformed into an opportunity, a stage to redefine not just his relationship with Seojin, but the very concept of self. The fear tethering him to a shadowy existence began to unravel. This revelation ignited a fearless passion in him, urging him to confront Ryu and the doubts that lingered on the edges of his mind with unabashed honesty. Each move Jin-ho made became imbued with purpose. The walls he had erected began to crumble, and where he once saw impenetrable shadows, he began to glimpse the prospect of unity, a harmony created by intertwining his past with the present. And then it struck him. Ryu was not merely an antagonist to defeat. He epitomized all of Jin-ho's fears, the representation of a life he no longer wanted. With every opponent felled, Jin-ho felt resurgence, freedom unfurling within him. The chaos around him was not a battleground filled with enemies, but a landscape ripe with potential. The potential for growth, compassion, and transformation. Ryu approached with renewed aggression, the glint of malice in his eyes. "You think you can forget everything? That you can simply walk away from what you've done?" he taunted. Jin-ho's voice rang with newfound strength. "What I've done does not define me. I reclaim my identity today, and I will not let the chains of my past bind me any longer." With each word, he flung Ryu's malice aside like debris, his punches fueled by emancipation. Jin-ho felt unshackled, ready to confront not just Ryu, but to embrace the complexities of love and self-acceptance. As the brawl reached its climax, the tide shifted. The adrenaline soared. Every punch was no longer a bid for dominance, but a celebration of self-definition, love, and transformed paths. It integrated not just the shadow of his tumultuous past, but the light of connection that Tamika and Seojin brought to his life. Reminders that vulnerability was not a weakness, but his greatest strength. With a final decisive strike, Jin-ho sent Ryu crashing to the ground. In that moment, the echoes of battle receded, revealing a stark and transparent truth. He stood not only as a warrior, but as a man who had chosen to unfurl the layers of his identity, one who had faced not just enemies, but the very depths of his being. Breathless, he took a step back to survey the scene. Opponents lay scattered, but the true battle had been won within him. He turned to Tamika, gratitude swelling in his chest, and then to Seojin. "I am who I am because of both of you," he said, vulnerability lacing his words. "And I won't hide from my past or my feelings anymore. I want to embrace all of it, if you'll let me." The connection forged in that moment radiated around them, a promise of acceptance, not just of each other, but of the narratives that led them here. Jin-ho saw the potential for all three paths to intertwine, to build a future where love flourished alongside lessons learned. Ryu lay defeat at their feet, but the real journey lay ahead, transforming their stories into a narrative that honored both struggle and triumph, hope and love. With a renewed sense of self and a dedication to authenticity, Jin-ho embraced this new chapter, an empowered declaration that with connections forged, depth reclaimed, and love embraced, he was finally ready to step forward into the light. This was not just a victory over enemies, but an awakening, a testament to the indomitable spirit that compelled him onward. The horizon stretched wide before him, shimmering with the promise of a future that welcomed the complexities of love and identity, embracing all facets of who he now was, strong, vulnerable, and irrevocably transformed. As they stood united, Jin-ho felt the weight of his past begin to lighten, melding beautifully into a profound sense of belonging. It was time to rewrite their stories, not just as survivors, but as architects of a life filled with purpose and love, where each voice mattered and every heartbeat resonated with profound meaning. As the dust settled and shadows receded, Jin-ho was ready to face the world united, resilient, and above all, free. The fragile strands of hope that once seemed so distant now formed a robust tapestry of connection, weaving through the hearts of those who were brave enough to confront their past and ultimately transform it into a legacy of love. If this story of profound transformation resonated with you, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This is the moment to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your insights matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this uplifting narrative that showcases the power of love and personal growth.